Femboy Venti will suck your enemies, and today I'm gonna tell you how to build him best. My name is Juice, and let's get into it. So what artifacts does this sweet femboy desire? None other than 4-piece Viridescent Venerer. This is quite frankly the only artifact set that you'd ever want to use on him. It's his tried and true best install pick. It offers a good chunk of elemental res shred upon swirling an element on foes. Basically what you'd expect. Good stuff. 2-piece mix and match sets include 2-piece EM, ER%, and animal percent is passable if you don't have the former. As for Venti's main stats, simple. Go for ER% or EM, and DM. This lad genuinely has to be one of the most straightforward to build characters in existence. Like, genuinely. He demands nothing in particular other than ER. If you're running an EM weapon, then use an ER Sands. Otherwise, use an EM Sands if you're on an ER weapon. Unfortunately, building crits on Venti isn't really worth the minimal returns that you'd get back. It's far more efficient to just stick the guy on triple EM, especially because the bulk of his personal damage comes from his strong burst swirls and mobbing situations. As for Venti's stat goals, simple. He literally has none. The only stat goals that you have are reaching certain ER thresholds, but really, you'll attain these so easily considering that all of his best weapon options are ER based, or if not, you can reach his demands easily using an ER Sands. Otherwise, dude ascends with ER, and self-restores energy after using his burst, along with having a fairly low burst cost. His stat goal is just get as much EM as possible, so that you can then reap the rewards of his personal damage. Don't leave him unequipped, that's a bad idea, as giving him EM artifacts is still a great boost to his overall performance. A cutie patootie bard like Venti needs the right instruments to create song, so what'll his finest weapon choices be? Nothing's ever gonna beat Elegy for the end. You get all the ER you could ever dream of from the main stat, and the passive offers your entire team a tidy attack percent buff, not to mention the neat 100 EM that this weapon can grant your entire comp. I seriously recommend this weapon, even as a standalone addition to your Genshin account. It's extremely valuable, even to this day, and is a fantastic bow to slap on supportive bow units on the whole. Otherwise, Stringless is nice thanks to the huge EM stick it offers. That's the main reason as to why you use it. Just make sure that you've got enough ER on this pick, but as we've discussed earlier, that really shouldn't be too hard to do. Favonius will of course be goated on him. The white particles are as excellent as ever. You're going to be completely covered energy-wise with this by your side. I'd say this would be your best bet on Venti if you don't have access to Elegy of the End. Insane how, as far as we've come in Genshin's life cycle, some things never change. Such as Favonius being the most omnipotent weapon series in the entire darn game. Literally any other ER stick bow is going to work fine on him. It doesn't matter what the passive does really, as long as it provides him with a sizable amount of ER. If you want a good passive, you either turn to Elegy or Favonius. Same logic applies to EM stick bows. If it's got EM on it, then yes, it will work on Venti regardless of whatever the passive is. EM mostly assists his personal damage, and considering that the guy doesn't really build any other stats, it's fair game. If you have nothing for him, then any old bow will do. But try get him a bow of EM or ER as the main stat as soon as you can. The lad isn't really asking for much here, man. And yes, crit bows will work fine on Venti, but unfortunately, they are indeed fairly wasted on the dude. I'd say these are your DPS-based bow users, unless you intend to double down on building crit on Venti, which is something that you should generally avoid doing, unless that's your particular goal. Yet who shall be the Animal Archon's designated driver? Well, one of his best use cases in the modern day is being used of Kniech. This involves him grouping enemies into one place, so that Kniech's cannon blast can shoot all enemies in one place. This helps out with the guy's single targetness, while also allowing for pyro to constantly be applied on the enemy via Venti's burst. This synergy is really nice if you're trying to force Kniech into a mobbing scenario, and I'd actually give this a spin if you ever have the chance. Mr. Settle Down can effectively use Venti in mobbing content as well, since his Hydro Pump lands within the range of his burst lift. This combo is literally wildly good when it comes to mobbing content. I'd say it's a fun team to give a spin when it works. That's the kind of key thing with all of his fellow synergies. When they work, they're killer. Otherwise, 99% of the time, you're better off using someone else. But when the scenario plays to Venti's strengths, you'll really be able to enjoy what's offered here. His last really notable synergy will be with Scaramouche. Essentially, if it's a mobbing floor, Venti is actually a better teammate to use over Kazuha here. He'll keep all the enemies in place, and then Moosh can take out all of his anger on the enemies up in front. When this works, it's actually a very efficient way to play the unit. There's of course the tried and true Ganyu setups that he has, but let's be real. This is old news and doesn't work most of the time. I wouldn't really pull Venti if you're a Ganyu main in specific anymore. But yes, their bursts do have excellent synergy when the situation allows them both to shine. However, this comp hasn't been relevant for a very long time. Otherwise, you can even consider double Anemo setups with both Venti and Kazuha. When the situation allows, these two genuinely make for a shockingly strong pair. I wouldn't underestimate how good they are when used together. Granted, it does have to be a situation where Venti's pulling works at the very least, but if that condition is met, then these two are absolute machines in AoE when paired up with one another. Brief shout out to Raiden too, since her initial slash can hit within Venti's burst, and so can her charge attacks. Also, for you based folk out there, Xiao and Venti can work together, but only if it's a situation where Venti is pulling heavier enemies together. If he's lifting up foes, then Xiao's plunge impacts aren't going to land on the enemy, you'll only get collisions, so keep that in mind. But yes, they can be made to work together, if you absolutely insist on it. Putting Venti on 4-piece Noblesse would be a nice way to make sure that he's at least still doing something, considering that his personal damage is way lower if he's not absorbing any elements. Example teams include Kanich, Iansan, Moika, Venti. Let the mighty be humbled! Lady Farina, Venti, Sitlolly or Shilonen. Scaramouche, Farazan, Bennett, Femboy, Ganyu, Kokomi, Shenhe. The Silly. Then you can use Kazuha Venti as a double core on the end of most DPSs for some fun grouping action. If you really want to try him in Xiao teams, then it'd go something like Xiao, Venti, Bennett, Farazan. Lady Farina doesn't fit as naturally within these teams, keep that in mind. Yet how does this cutie patootie work? Well, his normal attacks will deal 6 simple physical strikes, nothing much else to add here. As for his skill, if you tap it, he'll launch small enemies into the air and do some animo damage wherever the enemies are. If you hold it, you can create an updraft, which allows you to glide from your current location, very nice for exploration purposes. As for Venti's burst, he'll fire off a void, which will suck in all small enemies around him, or pull together heavier enemies. Extremely heavy enemies such as robots or constipated beasts cannot be lifted, but certain heavier enemies such as Abyss Lectors, Sumeru Desert Doritos, and Shadowy Husks can all be pulled into his void suction. He'll absorb Pyro, Hydro, Cryo, or Electro into his burst, whichever it first comes into contact with, and then deal swirl damage of that element over time until his burst ends. This is literally one of the most broken abilities in the game in heavy mobbing scenarios, but in regular situations, this can be a pretty underwhelming ability. Know how to play to its advantages. If you're brute forcing Venti versus a boss, then stand a bit further away so that his burst can actually hit the boss target, thus allowing you to take advantage of his swirl damage, even if it's not as practical anymore. As for Venti's Ascension passives, simple. His A1 is what allows his skill to create the exploration updraft. This is only relevant if you care for his exploration quality of life. His A4 allows him to restore a bit of his own energy after bursting, and allows him to act as a battery for his fellow teammates. Pretty convenient. You can build your Venti to have less ER in turn, but don't build your teammates to have less ER in turn. Because Venti's synergisticness of certain characters is so inconsistent, you'd rather take this as a neat quality of life buff on top of the regular builds that meet the regular requirements that are already there. As for Venti's talent priority, simple. Go for this. Unless you're specifically trying to do some physical Venti nonsense, I'd avoid leveling up his normal attacks entirely. I triple crowned him, but that's just because I appreciate peak femboys. But if you're not a fellow goated femboy enjoyer, then you can just ignore it. Leveling his burst is worthwhile, and his skill isn't all that high priority. Do with it as you wish. I'd say if you're gonna crown any ability of his, make it his burst, then at least get his skill to level 6 because it's cheap to do so resources-wise, or simply triple crown him like I did, because that's what cool people do. Trust me, it signifies having very good taste. This fella is in some severe debt when it comes to his wine tab, so if you'd like to help out with the costs, let's talk Constellations. I'd avoid this C1 unless you're aiming to do some physical Venti nonsense in particular. It's an utterly useless constellation that won't serve you whatsoever, unless you're trying to attain a very specific goal with it. Skip for sure. The red shroud is nice, but this constellation is aged poorly. You're not going to be using this dude in physical teams, and besides, even if you were, physical teams suck harder than Venti's burst in a mobbing scenario, dude. Increasing the level of his burst by +3 is fine, but it's nothing you should really be chasing after. I wouldn't go for this on its own. The extra damage bonus percent might have been strong back in 1.0 when damage bonus was a significantly rarer buff, but nowadays, it's not that hard to supply your teams with a whole bunch of it, so this C4 has lost relevance over time. Besides, it's not like it's particularly special even now. Skippable for sure. Upgrading his skill by +3 isn't really going to do much for you, it's just there if you want to see his skill upgraded. The res decrease is nice, but it's nothing that I go all the way to C6 over. You should seriously only consider this if you're Venti's #1 fan. There's far better supportive C6s that you could be getting, and this really is just a product of its time. It's got its use cases, but I wouldn't get this as a meta-focused whale unless you really knew what you were aiming for with it. Skippable C6 for sure. Avoid unless you genuinely have a purpose for it. Getting Elegy is the best thing that you could do for your Venti. Seriously. I'd 100% pick this up if you're interested in investing further. Otherwise, I'd avoid his constellations altogether unless you really want them. Take it from me, one of Venti's longest term fans. Even I don't have any copies of him. His constellations are seriously just that bad. You're not any less of a Venti fan because you don't want to pull for bad cons. Save your pulls for either future units, or to invest copies into a more valuable support. Unfortunately, because he was the first ever unit ever released, he does have to bear the brunt of some of these weird design choices that perhaps made sense back in 1.0, but just didn't hold up with how the game's meta developed. Venti is definitely a unit that aged like milk. However, in my eyes, he's the finest ancient wine that there is. Osmanthus style even. And to be completely honest with you, it's not like he was a really bad unit for such a long time. I feel like people were quick to write him off after Inazuma, but he definitely came back into form during Sumeru and Fontaine. Sure, he wasn't as good as he was back in his glory days, but he was definitely still being thrown a bone, being able to group Spectres, Kairagis, and some of those other heavier enemies. It's more so in Notland that he's just kinda fell off in my opinion. I do think that before Notland though, he did have his reason to be played in the meta, but nowadays, he's just becoming more and more niche as the Abyss becomes more and more boss-centric, with it only really leaning towards mobbing whenever weaker characters are being sold. It's unfortunately no surprise that he's really niche, and is for sure as a luxury pull can get. But with that being said, if you know what you want out of him, he'll serve you well. After all, he's still an excellent unit when it comes to overworld quality of life, and he's an absolute delight to use whenever the occasional Shillabis crops up. He's also a legendary theater unit, but literally who cares about theater man? I've been brute forcing this fella in content for ages now, and I'm only going to continue to do so. I'll use Venti wherever I want Toyverse, even if it ends up being the darn end of me. How about yourself? Are you planning on taking the fella for a spin? Let me know down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. As always, I have a ZZZ second channel. Head on over and subscribe if you're interested in some fun, silly ZZZ content. I'd also like to mention that I stream on Twitch. I stream once a week every week on Saturdays, sort of from free PMK time. Come along so that we can play Wuthering Waves, ZZZ, and do some other fun stuff together. Hopefully this video was able to get your Venti sucking the daylights out of his enemies. This has been Juice, signing out, and no matter how many ungroupables Hoiverse throws at us, we Venti fans shall remain united.